Welcome back, everybody. It's Ben from the Ben and Bev channel. Today we're going to be talking about one of 2021's most overlooked horror films,
Saint Maud.
If you look at the IMDb information for this movie, it was actually released in 2019, originally at the Toronto Film Festival. I'm not really sure if other countries were able to see it. I know that US distribution rights weren't granted until A24 and Studio Canal stepped in and pinned that release for mid to early April in 2020, pairing up with Easter that year.
I don't know about you guys,
but I couldn't escape the trailer for this movie.
The trailer for Saint Maud just immediately brought chills to me the first time I saw it in the theater, and for about a straight 6 months to a year, I saw the trailers all the time. Even when the movie got delayed until July, and then delayed again for an unknown amount, I still saw the trailers everywhere I went. The vibes were dripping eternal off the trailer, heavy with Carrie influence as well as overall dark sense of dread, teasing a more atmospheric horror movie along the likes of Midsummer, Hereditary, or The Lighthouse. But the movie ended up getting completely shelved for a little bit due to the pandemic, and it didn't see its release until the very beginning of 2021 on January 29th, and at that point in time, the trailers for the movie hadn't actually been re-released at all. I don't know if that's just with where I am currently, but I felt like I saw a lot of those trailers in 2020 when this movie was supposed to originally come out. I saw none of them announcing this movie actually coming out on January 29th of last year. I didn't know the movie had actually been released until I saw it on Blu-ray about a week ago, and I said, damn.
I missed that?
The film rolls out by giving us a little bit of insight into Morfydd Clark's lead character, Maud. There's a pretty significant chunk of trauma that gets hinted at the beginning of this movie, helps develop her character and explain why she's so withdrawn and awkward with her fellow peers and really anyone else in this small coastal town that she finds herself in. She has a really small apartment and really plain life, but you can tell she's someone who is behaving to a very specific set of orders, almost to the point of OCD, folding all their clothes, the way they stack everything in their room, whether that's figures of Jesus, her clothing, or her dishes. It's all very methodically planned out and delicately weaved. Scenes do a really great job of establishing this as well by the camera swaying over these tasks as she completes them, showing the look of seriousness and dedication on her face as she tries to complete these tasks. As you can tell, it means a little bit more to her than what it is we're seeing. Though she is just folding her clothes or just reading a moment of the Bible, everything about it seems bigger because the look on her face, just the emotion that Morfydd Clark brings to this role is
astounding.
You really feel the sense of awkwardness every time they go anywhere. There's scenes of her just sitting in a diner feeling uncomfortable, sitting in the middle of the room looking like she doesn't know what to do with herself. A lot of movies actually her just wondering to herself, narrating over scenes of her feeling uncomfortable as she tries to figure out what her purpose is, talking to God and trying to break down why exactly she's in this situation, trying to bring the best from it now that she has found this newfound form of faith. Something the trailer didn't really dive into is that she's actually fairly new to her faith. They don't explain directly what caused her to go to God or by which method she exactly decided to do that. It is mentioned that it is fairly early on, and as she's full of this sense of hope and glory and overall drive to do good with her life, she takes on this job for a very withdrawn and self-destructive woman going through the last stages of her life. She's played by Jennifer Ehle. I'm going blank on the character's name. She's a retired dancer. It's really interesting characters. You can tell she had to force retirement while in her prime. This disease has taken from her the very thing she loved the most, and her faith has also been lost along the way. So the battle between the faith and the faithless is ever intriguing and also ever stressful, as the two are forced to work with one another every day. She has to help this woman do everything from get bathed to stretch. And at times, while there is some tenderness between the two and there is some legitimate sense of emotion, once the fanaticism starts to come out, once the self-indulgence and a little bit of the insanity behind Maud begins to blossom, this character doesn't directly reference it at all. She just kind of lets it happen. She lets Maud get possessed with God right next to her, and you get the vibe she doesn't really believe most of it. And all of that comes to a head in the mid part of the movie. I'm not trying to break too far into it. This is a movie with a small amount of twists, and they do have a pretty big impact, as Maud's past as well does get broken down more in the film. With each detail you get, more understanding and darkness you gain from her backstory. And it's not just the acting, cinematography, and sound that are amazing. The movie handles its themes very well. I mean, it dives headfirst into how hard it is to be a caretaker for someone, specifically when they're in the end of their life. A lot of different conversations between other nurses or home caretakers in this movie where you get a really interesting perspective on what it means to different people to help guide someone through the last stages of their life. And though it's not the main theme of the movie, I thought it was an interesting undertone to dive into and a nice little bit of side drama to add to the realism of this film. And that's why, to me, it doesn't really read like a straight horror movie.
This movie is more so Martin Scorsese's The Taxi Driver rather than Carrie.
A very deeply personal character study where you're basically living with someone for the entirety of the film and watching them go through one of the most difficult parts of their life as they themselves fall into a form of madness, but you you only get it from their perspective. You only see things from Maud's perspective until the last second of the movie. In fact, when one of her old nurse friends comes to visit her, they actually talk about this. So the scene changes pretty quickly into a more horror setting. As the movie's starting to nosedive into its very shocking final act, one of her friends from her previous life shows up, and though you don't know what the relationship is, you can tell it wasn't necessarily the best. But this woman had a great concern for her when she ran across her in the street and wanted to check on her. While they're discussing things, as Maud is kind of losing her mind a little bit, as this woman actually out loud says the very big point of the movie about how we all live in our own personal bubbles, and we seldom check on how people are doing outside of our own personal bubbles, even if we're living right next to them. Something I definitely wasn't expecting this movie was the heavy amount of tenderness and just the amount of empathy you can build for Maud's character. You truly feel bad for her, even though she is being led astray by something that, even though she thinks it's God, you yourself are not really sure as the viewer. The really cool thing was how they dug into the lead actress's Welsh ethnicity by using the native Welsh tongue in a very, very prominent point of the film. When those lines are delivered to her character, you can see that the use of that language,
Even if you didn't know the actress was Welsh,
really speaks to her in the moment, and just the look in her eyes. You can see everything click and come into place as she realizes her purpose and what it is that she exactly needs to do. What it is she needs to do to become a martyr and to become a saint.
and that's not super pleasant. She definitely gets her wings, though.
Overall, I found Saint Maud to be a really exciting and enthralling personal study of the character that develops itself into a horror movie with a little bit of the religious fanaticism angle. And though overall it is just a study of one's mental health, I think as a horror movie it functions beautifully. It's a really shame that the movie didn't get to have a full theatrical run, and I really wish I could have seen it on the big screen too. I mean, wow, that was truly something. I mean, as soon as it ended, I was sitting on the couch like,
Don't feel okay.
and with a year that I think has been dominated with mainly slow burn horror movies, whether it's the supernatural Icelandic drama tale Lamb or Night House, the horror genre has definitely been in the slow burn category for the year, and I think this one is definitely the best of them. The character is completely approachable despite being completely inhuman at points of time, and her fragileness is what draws you to her kindness and her care, and you just want to see her succeed in whatever way it is. And
Until you realize what exactly it is she's talking about.
definitely one of the best horror movies that came out last year, and one that probably floated under your radar. If you can, give this movie a shot. It's worth the watch. If you're into horror movies, if you're into dramas, if you're into really weird and interesting stories with character dynamics and very real stakes in them.
Then give this one a go.
My rating for Saint Maud is an 8.9 out of 10. Have you guys seen the most underrated horror film of 2021? Let us know what you thought about in the comments below. We'll see you guys next time. Ben and Bev, out.